Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in just a few seconds as we admit everyone to today's webinar. Great. Well, we have a packed agenda today. I can't wait to get started. Welcome, everyone, to today's important webinar on expanding access to dual enrollment in Florida. We're thrilled you could all join us to discuss this critical topic. And for those who are tuning in later, we're so glad that you were able to listen in, and we can't wait to hear what you think. As we'll learn today, dual enrollment, which allows high school students to take college courses and earn college credits, has demonstrated tremendous benefits for students, for schools, for communities all across our state. We're going to learn a lot about that today, but we do know that students who participate in dual enrollment are more likely to achieve all the outcomes that we care about here at the Florida College Access Network. They enroll in college, they have higher GPAs, they actually complete their college degree. These benefits result in more vibrant and prosperous communities. However, as many of us on this call know all too well, there are still many barriers limiting equitable access to dual enrollment programs. So today we'll be making the case to expand access to dual enrollment, and we'll be discussing policy recommendations to achieve that goal. We'll learn about dual enrollment's current landscape and design, incentive models to expand access, barriers that persist, best practices for delivery, and probably most importantly, concrete next steps for policymakers and stakeholders to improve equitable access for students. So thank you for joining us in a thoughtful discussion, and we do want to have lots of back and forth in questions and answers about how we can work together to bring the undisputed benefits of dual enrollment to more students and communities. I'm so happy to get started. I've got some amazing colleagues on this call. I'll introduce our lead speaker shortly. We also have our FCAN policy analyst, Deborah Martin, who will be helping field your questions and making sure you get your answers today. So as we get ready to dive in, I'd just like to remind everyone of a couple items. First, we do welcome your questions. This is all about learning together. So please, at any time, submit your questions using the webinar dashboard. And Deborah will field them. She'll make sure that we elevate you and don't ignore you, even if we get caught up in all of the good information that we're about to hear. So thank you, Deborah. Second, please share what you're learning on your favorite social media site. We'd love to hear what's resonating with you on these social media channels highlighted here. I know we might have a few listeners today who may be new to FCAN's work. I'm Kim Krupa. I lead network development and engagement for the Florida College Access Network. And I'd like to give you a little bit of background on who we are before we get started. So FCAN's mission is to lead the collaborative movement to ensure every Floridian achieves an education beyond high school and a rewarding career. Our vision is to see a Florida working together where education is the pathway to economic mobility for all. We partner with communities and leaders to ensure more students achieve an education beyond high school, paving the path to prosperity for Florida families and our state. So these webinars are a core part of what we do. We love to highlight innovative practices that support our mission of ensuring every Floridian has the opportunity to achieve an education beyond high school and prosper in our ever-changing dynamic economy. There are 6 pillars that define our work and big buckets that we work in. I highlighted this at the top. This is why we're here today, this research and data unit that Dave Sobush is in charge of, who I'll introduce shortly. Top of the list. And the pillars that define our work are these 7 conditions for success, which I've also highlighted, the ones that are top of mind for today's topic on affordability, multiple pathways to success. We're not about one size fits all. And the effective use of data, transparent access to data, giving communities across our state data that they can use and activate. With that setup and context, it is now my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Dave Sobush. Dave is our new-ish Director of Research and Policy for the Florida College Access Network. I believe it's 5 months, but who's counting? He is a certified economic developer with over 20 years of research and policy experience in economic, community, and workforce development. In his role, he leverages a long career, but not that long, of data analysis, planning and reporting, coordination with outside agencies, project management, management of outside consultants, and development and implementation of recommendations to increase post-secondary education access and student success. Now, before he joined FCAN, he's held many leadership roles across our state in many different hats, but all similarly focused on advancing outcomes. The Florida Chamber Foundation, Tampa Bay Partnership, Hillsborough County Economic Development, the City of St. Petersburg Economic Development Department, and as a faculty member at the University of South Florida Center for Economic Development Research. His experience in economic development teaches us that true economic development occurs only when residents are prosperous. Dave, like so many of us, is the first in his family to earn a 4-year college degree. He holds an MBA from the University of South Florida, in addition to an MED and a BA from the University of Florida. He is a proud graduate of Countryside High School in Pinellas County and currently lives in Clearwater with his wife and 2 children. Dave, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to let you take it away.
Thank you, Kim. Really appreciate that kind introduction. As you were going through that, as I said, that doesn't sound like me, but all those things were indeed true. I am so very pleased to be at the Florida College Access Network and serve as the Director of Research and Policy and work with the entire team at FCAN and with our stakeholders, partners, allies, compatriots, partners in crime at time across this great state. And I'm pleased to have the opportunity for my first webinar here to be, a preview of a policy brief that will be coming out in the next few weeks here around dual enrollment. It is a lead-in to a larger research effort that is also underway to really dive into some primary research around the numbers, around the perceptions and, both qualitative and quantitative research. So I'm pleased to be here today to provide, just as Kim said, an overview of some initial findings related to dual enrollment opportunities to expand access and to streamline delivery. So with that, the opportunity that dual enrollment really provides is to improve those chances of pursuing and completing education beyond high school, as Kim mentioned. It is a course of rigor. It is accelerated, but unlike other courses and programs of rigor, and they're all great, recommend them all. Dual enrollment can be offered at any high school and any middle school student in the state of Florida. Dual enrollment is a more traditional means of, acquiring that college credit and that accelerated credit versus other programs that require the passage of a final test at the end, which for any number of reasons can be a barrier to getting that college credit and all the outcomes therefore. And why does this matter? So what, as so many people would say about educational attainment? The real answer is that increased educational attainment contributes to the overall well-being of communities. It helps attract businesses. In my days as a transactional economic developer, selling patches of dirt around the Tampa Bay region and around the state, that was always a question: what's the level of education of the folks in the area. And so when you have that number, you get on those lists for those things. And as you attract businesses, you provide opportunities for employees and residents to get the goods and services that businesses provide. And ultimately, we are creating a more vibrant and by definition, educated citizenry, all of which goes to foster a more prosperous society. So that's the so what in all of the work that we're doing around educational attainment in the state's Sail to 60 goal. By 2030, 60% of Florida residents aged 25 to 64 with a degree or high value credential. Now, the case for equitable dual enrollment access is also pretty clear. This is data from the U.S. Department of Education, their Office of Civil Rights, and their Civil Rights Data Collection. This is required to be filed by all districts up to their state, and then from states into the feds. And what you see on the left-hand side of bubbles, that is for the year 2020, 2021. It's the most recent data, but admittedly, it is the pandemic year. You see the enrollment of students by various races and ethnicities. So for demographic junkies out there, typically race and ethnicity are two separate concepts, but many times in education data, they are commingled. In here, when we refer to race, those are persons rather of non-Hispanic origin, and we have on the ethnicity side folks of Hispanic origin. Typically, those are separated. But what you see on the enrollment side is for example. Persons of Hispanic ethnicity accounted for 35.1% of student enrollment, but less than 30% of dual enrollment students. Similarly, Black and African American students, about 1 in 5 students overall, but 14.7%. So there are some gaps, and achieving better equity in dual enrollment access would mean that these percentage numbers more or less identify identically across both the student enrollment and dual enrollment student enrollment, which is not the easiest turn of phrase, dual enrollment student enrollment. There are innumerable benefits to dual enrollment for students. Kim ran through a lot of the academic ones: college readiness, critical thinking, and study habits. There are also, significant financial benefits. The table there shows, some typical savings for a dual enrollment student, what they would save in terms of a state college tuition, and some textbook savings. If those students, and those could be greater if it's at a state university system, or if especially considering if that student is leaving home to go elsewhere away from home for their studies, you would add in the housing. And so every semester, every year that you can kind of shave off of um, the the college experience would represent some significant savings. As we all know, tuition at both the state college and university system level has, largely held the line, tuition fees. But we've seen rampant increases in room and board, and as well as, room and board for on campus, and then, housing and food for those off campus. So significant savings. And these represent some of the lower amounts of those savings. Institutions also have a tremendous benefit in promoting and offering dual enrollment. For our K-12 school districts and others, private K-12 institutions, it promotes better student engagement. For all of the academic reasons that we mentioned, a more academically engaged student is an overall engaged student. It provides, in this sort of dynamic time in school choice and school opportunity for students and parents, it provides an opportunity for institutions and districts to, separate themselves and say, here's what we have to offer in terms of academic offerings to those students and families. In addition, for post-secondary institutions, whether those be career tech centers or our state colleges, community colleges, or our state university system institutions, it helps promote enrollment, especially if you are, working to ease that student from their high school into your particular institution. That doesn't happen all the time, but frequently it can. It helps promote a better community connection. Where you are no longer the logo or name on an advertisement or on the side of a building, or in the newspaper, but you are in the schools where students are able to take advantage of the dual enrollment offerings. And ultimately, as Kim mentioned, and as the research bears out, students with dual enrollment under their belt prior to high school graduation are typically more successful in their post-secondary, careers. So many benefits on both sides for both students, districts, and the post-secondary institutions. So just real quick on the current design of dual enrollment, because we had some questions come in earlier that, got to, some very key things related to dual enrollment. The course offerings of dual enrollment. Course offerings are any of the numerated classes, in the CTE, the Career and Tech Ed, or the state college system. So dual enrollment, while traditionally a college prep focused activity, has taken on more of a holistic approach to post-secondary education. And now there are, both sort of academic / college dual enrollment, as well as career dual enrollment opportunities. Credit transfer. This is an important distinction. Credit transfer from a Florida dual enrollment to a Florida state college or a Florida State University system is seamless. Those courses are accepted. They may or may not be accepted out of state, and they may or may not be accepted by private institutions in state. So that's always something to consider. And it plays into, and this will be sort of a repeated emphasis during the remarks, the importance of academic advising for the dual enrollment student. Understand where they want to go, and you can better help them determine whether or not dual enrollment is the path for them. Eligibility. So one of the key questions that we received is who's eligible for dual enrollment? A lot of that is prescribed in statute. Student must have a 3.0, must have passing tests, test scores on, the PERT, the sort of the college readiness exam. But there are also many exceptions to those rules. And many times, the individual agreements that are hashed out between school districts and between post-secondary institutions prescribe a variety of different ways for students to qualify and be eligible for dual enrollment. So, for example, I mentioned that there's a GPA and a testing requirement. What are some other options? In Miami-Dade County, the agreement between the school district, Miami-Dade County School Board, and Miami-Dade College specifies that students without a qualifying English score can still take a math dual enrollment as long as they have the math. So it's not both of them. And additionally, students without test scores and with at least a 2.5 GPA unweighted are eligible to take a curated set of classes. So there are individual agreements that allow for exceptions to that 3.0 and the testing requirement that's prescribed in statute. Location. Finally, there are a variety of modalities for dual enrollment studies. Dual enrollment may be offered on a post-secondary campus, virtually by a post-secondary institution, at a middle or high school by post-secondary faculty. So, a state college professor or faculty member would come in and teach inside the middle or high school that's offering the dual enrollment, or at a middle or high school taught by a district employee, so long as that teacher has 18 graduate credits in the subject area, and that teacher is willing to be assessed by the post-secondary institution, both their teaching as well as their curriculum. There is no one size fits all modality, given a lot of geographic distinctions across the state. So having a variety of modalities is beneficial for dual enrollment within the state of Florida. So quickly on some of the incentive models that have been put in place to promote dual enrollment across the state. First and foremost, dual enrollment is free for the student. If you are admitted as a dual enrollment, you are exempt from tuition fees and laboratory fees, also instructional materials. Districts and post-secondary institutions have an FTE bonus for successful dual enrollment completion, where an additional percentage of an FTE is awarded for grade of A or better by that student. Subject to legislative appropriation, summer dual enrollment is available. So a student can get a leg up on their studies over the summer and not have to miss any classes at their particular high school campus. There is a dual enrollment scholarship program, which is available for non-public school students. It is, again, subject to legislative appropriation, requires an agreement between the private school rather, and the post-secondary institution. It's also available for homeschool students as well. There is an instructional materials, appropriation that helps promote dual enrollment expansion. And most recently, there's been a dual enrollment educator scholarship program. So I mentioned the teacher requirements for dual enrollment, those 18 graduate hours, as well as in the subject area they want to teach, as well as the curriculum and curriculum and review process. So for instance, if there's a teacher that has 15 credit hours in history, they're 3 credit hours away. This program would provide the funds for them to go and take those remaining 3 graduate credit hours and therefore be eligible to teach dual enrollment within the public school. So I've talked about some of the incentives and the benefits and the sort of the nuts and bolts of how dual enrollment is done. There are some barriers to dual enrollment expansion within the state. Many of them are financial and tied to the individual agreements that are reached by the districts and the post-secondary institutions. So on the financial side, one of the questions in these agreements relates to how will costs be shared? The costs can't be borne by the student because statute makes that tuition, instructional materials, and fees are not permitted, and students are exempt for them. So institutions need to, both on the district and the post-secondary side, need to negotiate these terms and re-ratify them every year. And in most cases, that's not too much of an issue. They maybe, dust things off and adjust a number here or there, but they are at times, based on relationships and previous understandings. And so the fact that they need to be re-ratified and reaffirmed annually is one of the challenges for those cost sharing issues. Policy versus practice. So the policy is that dual enrollment can be provided in a variety of places. But there are some financial incentives, for students to remain at one place or the other. So there are times where it becomes difficult perhaps for a school or a district to retract a class, primarily due to some of these financial incentives and financial processes that are placed there. And public awareness. There's a common thread here, right? And it's the finances and how this all gets paid for. So depending on the financial model, it may be more beneficial for districts to promote other, courses of rigor and accelerated options. And if that's the case, at times there are, there's the potential for, a lack of promotion of dual enrollment. And of the many courses of rigor, and when we talk about that, we're talking about ACE, AP, IB. Dual enrollment is the one that is most flexible. It is the most scalable, and to lose the institution, the district that is closest to the student, through some less than ideal incentives that are baked into the financial model, it is at times a challenge. Want to talk quickly about some of the things that dual enrollment is doing very well and some of the best practices throughout the state in terms of the delivery. We've talked a lot about the structure of dual enrollment, but how we get things done and how we make things successful. These relate to some of the questions we received. So I have some of the key best practices listed on the left-hand side and some of the logos of some institutions we identified that are doing a great job here. I want to talk first about assigned advisors, the importance of advisors in the process, understanding where a student wants to go and how to help them get there is key. And what we've seen in the southwest part of the state of Florida Southwest State College, serving Charlotte, Collier, Glades, Hendry, and Lee, they've had about 3,200 students in recent years go through their accelerated pathway courses with a 93% success rate. So they're getting that college credit, and that translates those 3,200 students to 48,000 credits and a savings of an estimated $7 million. And a lot of what that's attributed to, at least by leaders in that area, is the fact that all accelerated pathway students are assigned a academic advisor. And when students log into their student portal, nice and bright, big and bold, is a reminder that this is your academic advisor, and to reach out to them. And there are communications back and forth. Another delivery best practice, thinking about the end game in a lot of the statements that have been made earlier, both by myself on the economic development side and Dr. Krupa talking about the mission of FCAN, a prosperous career. Business partnerships. So getting students involved and exposed to what's going on in their, chosen career path. And in the Lake Sumter region in the central Florida part of the state, we've seen a tremendous focus on, especially on the medical sciences, where you've had hospital systems get involved in the both course content as well as the delivery and experiential learning related to dual enrollment, really helping these students understand what's going on with their future career trajectory. Automated processes, right? If it's simple, it usually gets done faster, right? Where what we've seen, especially the example here is Miami-Dade College, is a lot of sort of the routine parts of the college experience that get that may trip up some students, and especially when we're talking about expanding access and being more equitable and thinking about our first-time students. Miami-Dade school district students that have been admitted to a dual enrollment program are allowed to self-register just like any other student would, and there are automated processes in there that ping the high school counselor to approve and sign off on the student's course selection, and also at the same time, those students can order their textbooks. So some simple but important business processes that get streamlined in that best practice there. And then finally, the importance of promoting dual enrollment, especially for students that may not be aware of its existence or its benefits. Valencia College offers a variety of virtual dual enrollment information sessions. They have dedicated dual enrollment coordinators where that's what they wake up and do every day is, make sure that dual enrollment students are as successful as possible. And typically when it's somebody's, number one job, it is their number one job. So there's a variety of outreach and promotion efforts, that take place at Valencia. So wrapping up here before we get into some questions. I know some have been submitted and, some have been coming in on the chat. There are, just a few recommendations that the policy brief suggests for future study and execution. And one is expanded student eligibility. And what that means is we've talked about at the very beginning, I said, the statute says 3.0 test scores, exceptions may be made. We have enough time under our belt with a lot of you know, the students that have been, admitted to dual enrollment and made eligible to dual enrollment under the exceptions or alternate eligibility. Let's take a look at those, find the ones that have been most successful, and let's get those codified. So a student no longer needs to hear 3.0 and hear test score and then hear maybe. Let's get the maybe put in statute, right? And so that's an opportunity there. Enhanced public information around dual enrollment and college prep. What we envision there is something very similar to the Get There Florida, which is a more career focused promotion effort that has been very successful. But there's a way to adopt and leverage that model, not necessarily latch onto it, but something similar in its scope in terms of everybody rowing in the same direction around dual enrollment and college success. Increased guidance and support for partnerships. And so what that really gets to is there are local differences, and there's always going to be a need for local districts and local and post-secondary institutions to work out these agreements. But similar to the expanded student eligibility, we've gone through this drill, enough where we can see what are some of the common factors, and let's not have to renegotiate those every year and what's been working well, and just make the process a little simpler in that regard. And then refine delivery models. And this really gets back to understanding that students' ultimate destination, and it gets to advising and what do you want to do. And this dual enrollment should not be about, let's get some college credits under the belt per se, but rather let's get those 15 credits with a purpose. Let's get those 15 credits that lead us towards the degree we'd like to get, and the degree that we'd like to get that leads us towards the career we'd like to get. So it reemphasizes the importance of academic advising, especially for the dual enrollment student. In terms of some next steps, I mentioned that there is a larger and data robust, both quantitative and qualitative effort underway for better dual enrollment data and outcomes. And what that really gets to is understanding not just how many students and the demographics of students that have enrolled in a dual enrollment class, but let's take a look at the ones, and let's take a look at some patterns of what has happened with a student that is enrolled in more than one dual enrollment class. That's not available with the public available data. So we are working closely to sift through some other data to understand that best, and then to further document these best practices around what would be the most common eligibility expansions that could be codified into statute. What are best practices in terms of promoting dual enrollment, and then what are best practices in sort of smoothing that process from the dual enrollment into a a full-time in college enrollment experience. So I know that's a lot. I know that we have some other questions to answer, and I guess this is the point where I stop sharing and turn it over to Deborah.
Thanks, Dave. So we do have some questions that came in during registration, so I'll just kind of start giving you those. So first, what are the greatest barriers that high school students face when considering dual enrollment?
Okay, so that is I mean, setting the regular eligibility, sort of concerns aside, I'd say that dual enrollment capable students, um, and especially when you think about equitable access, to these opportunities, dual enrollment capable students without the family background or supports may be less likely to be thinking about college or post-secondary education, period. And I would say it so a lot. If you're not thinking about college or post-secondary education, you're probably not even thinking about dual enrollment to begin with. Um, so dual enrollment, what's that? I'm not going to college. I don't have the money for college. So many of the same barriers, and that's why all of the initiatives and activities that so many that you, Deborah, are leading, that Kim is leading, and that many on this call I'm sure are leading, are of course interconnected parts of the entire ecosystem that is the movement to ensure that every Floridian gets some type of education beyond high school. So that's a long way of saying many of the challenges that exist for getting students to even think about college are probably similar to the challenges in getting them to think about dual enrollment.
Okay, thank you. So next, what tools have been most helpful for schools as they guide their students to seek dual enrollment courses?
Yeah, so I'd love to hear the feedback from those on the webinar today. I'm sure my email will get presented at some point, but if not, it's dsobush at floridacollegeaccess.org. But I'd share with you, some of the key things that the National Association of Secondary School Principals have mentioned in terms of getting successful dual enrollment. And so one is to sponsor college nights to educate parents and students on the benefit of taking college courses while in high school, and many of you are doing that as well. That is not a one and done thing. I know that those are resource intensive and time intensive, but sometimes the message has to be repeated quite a bit. And of course, these are really not, just college, but it's college and career nights. That of course is step one in the process. Uh, Another is to promote dual enrollment programs broadly in the community and at feeder middle and elementary schools. So don't wait until the student is, walking in as a freshman and there for the freshman orientation, where they are seeing all of their friends that they haven't seen over the summer. That's an old guy talking when you didn't used to see your friends over the summer. Now you carry them around in your pocket. But it it it's the same logic that high school football coaches use, which is we'll have a basic version of our offense and defense at the middle school that is coming, or we'll provide a basic version of our offense and defense to the local Pop Warner league, so that they understand what's going on and what's around the corner for them when they get to high school. So early promotion outside of the walls of your particular institution is helpful in promoting dual enrollment. And finally, utilize to the extent you can student ambassadors and student voices. It's one thing for Dave Sobush I'm sure Kim Krupa would do a much better job than me speaking with a high school student. But for any adult to talk to a kid is not as powerful, and say, here's what could happen is not as, powerful as a near peer or peer saying, hey, here's what did happen. So utilize student ambassadors and student voices, giving those underclassmen something to aspire to make sure that they remain eligible for dual enrollment at a later date. And of course, there's many other things and many, very creative ways to sort of deploy those strategies that I mentioned.
Great, thank you. This was more of a comment, not really a question, but just kind of putting it out there for in case others didn't see in the chat, they can hear about it. And then, if you have any feedback that you want to offer. But someone kind of mentioned that they would encourage undocumented students to take dual enrollment courses while in high school to provide them with additional college savings, before they head on to that post-secondary education.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody and everybody.
Okay, great. Another question we have here is, how is financial aid impacted for students that earn their AA degree, but then don't have their prerequisites for their intended major?
Hmm. Well, every student's financial aid situation is different. So I'm going to have to default to maybe sort of a very broad base for this. Entering a bachelor's program without the prereqs for the major could add time to the degree, and time is money, right? The good news is that dual enrollment and other accelerated options, AP, IB, ACE, are statutorily excluded from the excess credit hours, right? So now if you take your 145th credit at a state university system, for example, that is that means you're 20% over the 120 credits you need. That 145th credit will cost you double, right? But dual enrollment and other accelerated options are not subject to that excess hour charge. But the time and effort, right? And, the significant and really the only growing expense in the cost of attendance, as tuition and fees have held the line for several years, is the housing, the food, all of the other stuff that goes beyond tuition. So the extent to which a student can reduce the time to degree and still maintain their on their academic experience, right, is beneficial. But I would say that I'll think about it a little bit more, but I can't off the top of my head think about a situation where financial aid would be impacted by entering graduating high school with your AA, but not meeting the requirements of your major.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So you kind of touched a little bit on, of course, other advanced course classes such as AP. I know our focus is dual enrollment here, but this is more maybe opinion based. But someone asked, would you encourage a student to take both AP and dual enrollment courses at the same time? Does one provide a benefit over the other? You might not be the right person to answer this, but
Um, I think these are like real kitchen table conversations that every student has, or hopefully has with their parents, and has with their guidance counselors. Assume and we all know the ratio of students to guidance counselors across the state is somewhere around one guidance counselor for every 450 students. So these are difficult decisions to make. I would say think about what you want to do, and think about what is the likelihood of you passing the AP test at the end of the year. Passing an AP test, typically will have a wider array of non-Florida institutions that accept it. So if you are thinking you need to go out of school, I mean, out of state, or hope to go out of state, you are more likely to be assured that the credits from the successful passing of that one test in late April or early May would transfer. But if you know you're going in state and you have good career advice and you are taking a dual enrollment course that you can be reasonably sure will count towards your general education or prereqs for your desired major, dual enrollment is a great option. It is not a single high stakes test at the end, so you have I think a little bit better sense of how of your likelihood of attaining that college credit at the end. So that's a really long way of saying I don't know. Depends. Search me. That's those aren't the answers that people want, but I apologize.
Okay, perfect. Another question here. What are the best practices related to academic advising for dual enrollment students that align with their future college and career goals?
Right. So I talked a little bit about making sure that district guidance counselors are speaking with post-secondary education advisors, and that is a natural first step. So making sure that what you're doing in your high school is translating smoothly into a post-secondary institution. And that's actually one of the instances where there is perhaps on the advising side maybe a little bit of an advantage for the post-secondary institution to be delivering the dual enrollment content, right? Because you're more likely to interface with the post-secondary advisor versus sort of being a in-house district. So similarly, industry needs to provide feedback for institutions both at the district and at the post-secondary level, just to say, hey, these are the skills and competencies that are needed for careers in these industries, careers which may be growing in regions, careers which may be growing nationwide. And I think that's certainly part of that more qualitative research that we'll be doing in the next phase of this process. And but I would love and thank you whoever typed it in. I think it might have been Kim. I'm Dr. Krupa, who put my email in there. If anybody's got sort of best practices related to that academic advising, I'd love to hear them.
Great, thank you. So then kind of talking about when these students then move on to their post-secondary education after high school. Someone asked, how do colleges, quote unquote, look at students that have taken dual enrollment classes? Is it looked at as a pathway that will give these students a better chance of acceptance at their desired college or university? That's loaded.
Yeah. I'm not a college admissions officer. I would say that I would say that I would hope that every admissions counselor looks at the student as a whole, and that there may be some uh, it would depend on the institution. It would just depend on the student as a whole. I would say that every student that comes in with some well-intentioned and well-designed accelerated curriculum is helping that institution meet its, you know, 4-year graduation rate, and its sort of 6-year graduation rate. So I would anticipate that, uh, colleges would look very favorably at students that are coming in having proved and demonstrated success in accelerated coursework options. And especially among our Florida institutions, students that have a, some of those Florida course numbered, classes under their belt. Kim, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, it's a tricky question, and I think that you handled that pretty well. I'm curious if anyone on the call has more stories or insights to share on their experience with maybe their own child or students that they know. We do know that it isn't a one size fits all situation. And I think Dave was really careful to say, what is the student's goal? What is the student's plan? And making sure that dual enrollment is the right fit for them. But also, what does it mean to have equitable access to dual enrollment for the students who we're not currently capturing on a college path? So that's really kind of circling back to how you started your remarks. Who is this for? And how can we capture more students on this path?
Great. Well, thank you guys both for tackling that one. So it looks like we have one last one here. Oh, actually, before we get to a new question, Tiffany Braun put in the chat, she's an associate director at UWF, says we don't necessarily look at their dual enrollment credits to give them preference to admissions. It really just is about the overall admitting requirements. So thank you, Tiffany, for that insight. So one last question here. I think I kind of know the answer to this, but we're putting it out there. Do we think it's possible in the future for students to be able to have study abroad experiences through dual enrollment courses?
Well, I don't want to imagine the future where possibilities are limited. Okay, that should be something that is like on like a picture of an eagle that you see at your dentist's office or something like that. But yeah, I mean that I think the structure is there, and there's probably some enterprising institution that might figure out a way to make that happen. I don't know that travel is specifically exempted from student recapture per se. So you still wouldn't be able to pay for, the instruction or those other things. But I think that, you know, I think that that is feasible. I don't know that a study abroad where there are several, extra costs really helps truly expand dual enrollment or make it more equitable. But it sounds really neat. Kim, anything to add?
Yeah, I like that. Also, measured response. Cool. Probably not likely anytime soon.
All right. Well, thank you guys both for answering all those questions. Unless we get anything else in the chat, that is it for now. So I'll turn it back over to you, Kim.
Oh, thank you. That was our executive director chiming in there. Thank you, Braulio. Um, just so everyone knows, if you're curious about the dual enrollment data for your school, for your school district and your county, that is available on the Florida education portal. You can look up dual enrollment disaggregated data, just like Dave showed at the beginning, for your individual school districts and your individual high schools. And you can see what those equity gaps are. And we can share the link in a little bit, unless someone has it at the ready. But I just wanted to reshare my screen and close out with a couple updates and reminders from FCAN. First is that we have our amazing summit coming up And the theme this year fits with the theme of today's dual enrollment call, which is access and equitable access for all. So we wanted to remind everyone to save the date for our upcoming College Access Summit. This is the place to go to in Florida for college access professionals. We anticipate a big crowd this year, 400 to 500 guests. Dave, in addition to directing research and policy, is also helping with the content for the summit, and he will be one of our featured breakout speakers. We have over 30 breakout sessions, 4 keynotes, and spread over 3 days. We hope to see you all in Orlando. And our registration will kick off on Tuesday, which is January 31st. So look for lots of messaging. And if you subscribe to our newsletter, you will get that in your inbox. If you don't subscribe to our newsletter, oh, and please, this is the landing page for our summit before I move away from the slide, fcansummit.org. This will be updated on Tuesday with a live registration page. And if you don't subscribe to our newsletter, we definitely want to encourage you to do that because we are pumping out 3 to 5 pieces of information per month, not even including all of the happenings going on around our state that we put out on social media. So here's the homepage for Florida College Access Network.org, and then you can click on subscribe and fill in your information and get our information in your inbox. Please also follow us on social media so that you don't miss anything from us. And just to wrap it all up, this recording will be posted on our website and also all those channels I just mentioned, along with a summary of today's call and what the next steps are as Dave prepares to release his policy brief. So thank you all so much for joining us, and we look forward to keeping in touch.